All right, so taking a look at Ecclesiastes 7:16, Solomon himself states, "Do not be too righteous." So what do you mean being too righteous? Well, for example, being too righteous today in the UK, we're seeing all sorts of events taking place, and no one's really fighting back. You're hearing about all these uh, crimes and etc., but you don't really hear about people mobilizing to take care of the crime. Now, this would be an example of being too righteous. So, being too righteous or thinking thinking that it is righteous, it's not really righteous. Righteousness implies God's will, right? You're in alignment with God's will, you are righteous. That being said, if you are being cowardly, if you are being weak, that's not really in alignment with God's will. And so Revelations 21:8 says, "The cowardly do not receive heaven." And so righteousness is more doing what God intends for you, right? And so does God want his people safe and protected? Yeah, absolutely. The Proverbs 28:1 says the righteous are as bold as lions. Okay? And here is Jesus himself in the driving out of the temple in John 2:15. So he, Jesus, made a whip of cords and drove them all out from the temple courts. So here we see Jesus himself standing up very boldly, very courageously against corruption, injustice, evil, things like that. Sometimes it's okay to let things slide, and other times it's absolutely not okay to let things slide. So, understanding that a good interpretation of the Bible will create strength. It will make you wise, it will make you knowledgeable, it will make you strong, and, right, above all, spiritual. It will give you a connection with God. So when you are seeing people that are not possessing these traits, right? Well, they are traits that are to be pursued, right? The Bible instructs Christians to get these things and to embody them, right? Uh, Understanding that I would say that Christians, they have gears, right? We start at the love and mercy of Jesus Christ, but then, right, when people aren't really being very nice, or there's crimes being committed, you're at war, right? Then the wisdom of Christ, when he's saying, "Do unto others as you should," uh, is changed, right? So in the beginning, when you're dealing with people, it's very wise to be very nice, polite, keep manners. But if the other side chooses to abandon the ways of God for the ways of the devil and start stealing and hurting people, things like that, you are permitted, you are commanded by the Bible to drive the darkness out. All right, and so all throughout the Old Testament, we see the prophets driving out evil. And here in Jeremiah 15:19, it states, "If you take forth the precious from the vile, if you separate, if you remove the precious from the vile, thou shalt be as my mouth," right? And so there will be blessings for a place that is very safe and very good and very righteous. But obviously, nobody wants to live in a city that's really crime rich, etc. Also, this is an Old Testament reference. Here is a New Testament reference. Christ himself, "Ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt hath lost its savour, wherewith shall it be salted again? It is thenceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden, trampled under the foot of men," right? And so who drives people out? Who drives the criminals out? Christians are supposed to drive criminals out. Now, this is not as easy. It's actually very difficult, and sometimes it can take a lot of courage, right? This is not as easy as sitting in church and saying, "Yeah, I'm Christian." This is not as easy as singing together Kumbaya in church. And so sometimes you'll hear pastors, people fiddling with verses. They're telling you, "Oh, let it go, only mercy, don't ever seek retribution, things like that. It's not correct, unfortunately. Um, Now, being very merciful is wise, but just letting everything go, letting people walk on you, right? Well, there's a time for mercy and there's a time for action. And so understanding that is required to become Christian, right? The Christians, the righteous, are bold as lions. And where do you see this, right? Well, here's John 2:15 once again. So he, Jesus, made a whip out of cords and drove them from the temple, both sheep, cattle. So Jesus himself, very courageously, very bravely, is driving corruption out. He is driving himself, we ourselves, driving corruption out, driving the darkness out of our community so that we can remain separate and remain communities of the light.